This is another episode of the Maverick Makers podcast. We have Salima Valji. She is an internationally sought after speaker and thought leader on leadership topics related to advancing women and people of color. Salima was recently awarded the 2023 recipient of the World of Difference Award by the International Alliance for Women, recognizing her impact to women's economic empowerment. Salima is also the CEO and founder of Unleash Forward, a leadership accelerator focused on propelling women and people of color to senior leadership roles. Unleash Forward partners with individual leaders and organizations focused on closing retention, promotion, and pay gaps through executive coaching, training, consulting, and keynotes. With over 25 years of extensive expertise as an executive consultant and certified coach, Salima has made a substantial impact on leaders and teams worldwide. You're going to want to listen to this episode. It is very inspiring to hear about Salima's journey from corporate to the big, bold move of entrepreneurship. Let's go. We are back with another episode of the Maverick Makers podcast. I am thrilled to have Salima Valji, CEO and founder of Unleash Forward, on the show this week. Salima and I have done some work together. She is an amazing speaker and leader, and I can't wait to hear about her Maverick journey. So welcome, Salima.
Thank you. Excited to be here, Michelle.
Yeah, me too. So let's start off and tell everybody about your amazing Maverick journey. Let's start at the beginning, where you were in corporate to where you are today.
Lots of twists and turns in my corporate or in my overall journey, I have to say. I started my career in IT strategy. I worked and then moved to e-commerce. I worked for Deloitte Consulting for 4 years, 100% travel. I got to travel to some amazing places. I even worked in Hawaii. So it was a really fun time in your early 20s. It was super fun, but I got burned out at a very young age. So, that was a really, good, valuable experience for me. From there, I had always wanted to do fashion school when I graduated from high school. And my immigrant parents are like, no, you're not going to fashion school. You're going to get a degree. Then you get a degree, then you can decide what you're going to do after that. You couldn't get a degree in fashion back then. So that's, where my parents were coming from. And so I saw that as an opportunity, and it got laid off during the first .com bubble. So saw it as an opportunity for me to but to actually try fashion school out. And I did that. And I ended up landing a role at La Senza in the e-commerce. Really liked e-commerce, but didn't love fashion so much. And so I went back into technology, and I was working at Microsoft for 4 years. And that was an amazing, amazing place to be. I really enjoyed my time there. Then I moved to the agency side. So, and I was vice president of digital at Edelman. And that was a very, my departure from there was a big part of inflection of the rest of my career. I had a lot of what I call career trauma happen there because I was let go, and not let go because there were layoffs happening, not being let go because I wasn't performing at my job, but I got let go because I wasn't managing my image. And we can talk some more about that. Then from there, I went to Sonic Boom. It's another digital agency. I was the managing director there. Another really wonderful experience. And as I was moving throughout the agencies, and I just really found I was no longer passionate about the digital world. And one thing, as I was trying to figure out what I want to do next, one thing I had been receiving feedback was I was really good at building teams. I built a brand new team at Edelman, brand new team at Sonic Boom. And so I was like, why don't I do this for other people? Build digital teams. Well, that didn't go out so well. I did not enjoy that so much. When you're inside an organization versus outside an organization, it's very different. but that led me to teaching. And so I became a marketing professor at George Brown. And from there, I then started doing leadership development and teaching leaders how to become a better leader. That was a really interesting experience. I had no training. I was always interested in leadership development. I was always reading all the books, but I didn't really have the training to actually go out and do this. And so it was really, and that's kind of how my keynote speaking career started. I was actually doing a keynote at, not a keynote, but I was speaking at a HR conference about social media. And somebody in the audience, somebody was at my table, said, "You are really good at speaking." And I was like, "Oh, okay, thank you." And then as we were talking about what's next, he's like, "You'd be really good at this." And I had no idea what he was talking about, but he made the introductions, and that's how I got into leadership development. So that's really how the speaking career started. There were more experiments that happened along the way. I even did, I don't know if you know Stella and Dot, the jewelry company. I was a stylist for that. I really wanted to understand, how is social media and social selling and how that works. So I got curious there. And of course, the fashion side of me is part of that. So I did that. Um, I, there were more experiments. I don't remember, but I just was trying to figure out what was lighting my passion. It was just fine. I was really struggling to find that. And then one day somebody said to me, you have a really coaching style approach to how you facilitate. And I was like, I don't know what that means, coaching style approach. So that got me curious, and that led me to coaching. And so I did my coach training, and I loved it. I was like, oh, I found my people, but I'm like, who's going to pay me to coach them? There's those self-doubts that show up. And so I dabbled in it. It was about 20% of my business at the time. So I was doing leadership development, and it was about 20% of my business at the time. And the pandemic happened, and all my leadership development, all the training, everything just stopped overnight. Like, all my business went away. And so it was an opportunity for me to just really go deep into the coaching side. And it was it was a really tough year. You're going from zero revenue, rebuilding. And it was a tough year, but man, it was an amazing year at the same time. And it has really shaped the way my business is today. And so that's what I mean by I started this with sharing. There were lots of twists and turns. I never did the same job twice. I always wanted to do something different. I always wanted to learn. I always wanted to try different things. And I did that both in the corporate side, and I did that also on the entrepreneurial side.
That's one heck of a resume. I had no idea. Look at all that experience. And I love that you call it twists and turns, and then you call it experiences and experiments. And I think that's an absolutely wonderful way to look at life and careers and journey, and amazing and good for you. So let's just touch back on, you mentioned that word, you did not manage your image well. I really want to understand, what does that mean?
Yeah. So I will say that career trauma experience that I had, it took me many years to get past that.
Mm.
And it wasn't until one of the key moments that really helped me grow from that experience was when I had discovered a framework from Harvey J. Coleman's book. And now, of course, now it's escaping me the name of the book.
That's okay.
So Harvey J. Coleman's book, and he himself, to give you a little bit of a story about him, he was a consultant at IBM, and he got passed up for promotion 3 times. And every time he'd ask, why am I being passed up? It's to people who are, achieving less, and people who are less tenured than me. And he was always being told, not your time, not your time.
Mm.
And so he eventually left, and he formulated this framework based on his experience and based on his research. And he calls it PI. And PI stands for performance, image, and exposure.
Mm.
And he shares is that you don't just need performance in order to accelerate and move it forward in your career. You actually need to be managing your image, and you need to be managing your exposure. And in fact, performance is, as you become more senior, performance is only 10% of your formula, and 30% is your image, and 60% is your exposure. And for me, having immigrant parents, all I was ever taught was like, just work hard and you will get rewarded. I didn't know anything else. I didn't have any frame of reference. I was one of the first in all of my cousins to have vice president and managing director roles. Like, so I didn't have any real guidance to know how to show up in corporate. And so there was a situation or scenario that was happening and unfolding when my experience there, which was there was somebody who was not happy that I was chosen for the role. And, I learned this 2 weeks into the role. It wasn't somebody I interviewed with, somebody I hadn't met. It was somebody in a totally different office. Just, I guess, had read my resume and just didn't feel I was the right person.
Mm.
And so I was told, don't worry about it. We got you. We hired you for your leadership skills. We hired you because of what you're going to build here for us. And I was like, okay. And off I went. And this kept popping up every kind of quarter. And I was always told, you're fine. Don't worry about it. You're good. And eventually the frequency of that messaging kept popping up and I was never addressing it.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually it came to the point where, 2.5 years later, where all of a sudden there's a huge impasse between me and this individual. And this person says, you're terrible at your job and I'm making a case against you and I'm working with your team. So, somebody who's being really insubordinate and really trying to build a case against me.
Mm.
When I went to go share this with HR and with the CEO of the organization, they're like, okay, we're going to look into this. And then eventually was found out, okay, we're writing this up in her file. And I was like, really? That's the action that you're going to take with this kind of behavior? You're going to allow this in the culture? And so that was the real warning sign to me of like, okay, things are not safe for me here. And so eventually I was asked to leave the organization to say, we're deciding to part ways. And so it was very traumatic for me because I didn't understand. I'm like, I gave this role everything. And I had built up the digital practice from zero to multi-million dollars. There was a team there. Like there was so many incredible achievements and milestones and so much to show for the effort that I had done. So I knew it wasn't performance related. And I didn't understand why they had made that choice until I had discovered Pi. And it was because I didn't build very many, I had great relationships, but I had only one sponsor, which was my boss. And when his capital ran out, there was nobody else to speak up for me.
Mm.
And also because I wasn't managing my image. And so the seed had been planted and it was allowed to grow. And I wasn't managing the image. I wasn't, changing the narrative. And so the narrative then just caught up for me. And it was like, I wasn't fired because of my past performance. I was fired because there was lack of belief in my future performance. And so that understanding that was really freeing, and which is really taking me to where I am today and doing the coaching work and the speaking work that I do today, which is really around helping people to understand if you're spending all your time in performance, you're not going to get the growth. You're not going to get to the levels of leadership that you're looking for if that's where you're spending all your time.
Wow, that hard lesson became the framework. And I think that's amazing. Interesting, really interesting. I don't think people really do understand how important image and exposure is. Exactly what you're saying. So at this point,
it's a huge aha. Like when I share that with my clients, whether it's in a coaching session or rather I'm speaking about it, it's a huge aha. And then I can see with my clients, and I have so many examples of how they have changed the trajectory of their careers. And they'll say to me like, oh, I just had the best review I've ever had. And I ask them, what was the change of that? And they'll tell me it's because I started to focus on my exposure and image. I stopped focusing on trying to prove my worth and trying to prove that, the doing all the work. And it really helps to build their confidence. It really helps to scale their leadership and show up in different ways. So I have so many examples of the impact that it's had.
Amazing. And what do you think your biggest maverick move is to date?
I've had many. I think as an entrepreneur, you need to take a lot of bold moves. And be really maverick about your business. If I may share a couple, I think is really important for anybody who's thinking about leaving corporate. It's
Mm.
very scary. It's very scary to leave corporate. You're going to go to something where it's the unknown. It's scary because the income gets disrupted. You don't know what it's going to look like. Um, so there was actually in the middle of my entrepreneurial career, I had in 2016 got into an car accident, and I ended up getting a concussion, and I wasn't healing from it. And so I was like, I can't run a business and I can't show up as my best self. I just need a role where I can come in, do the work, and then just leave. I needed a place where I could really focus just on my healing. And so I did some contract work, and it took me about a year and a half to get back to my health. But I was in that role for 3 years. And I was just like, at a point, it became safe. And it was a point where I was just not comfortable to take a maverick move, to take a bold move. And so finally, I was just like, you know what? My parents didn't immigrate to Canada so that I could just be comfortable, that I'm just doing this role that wasn't really challenging me, that wasn't really in my full potential. So, and even though I had started looking for work and trying to figure out, I wanted to, and during that time while I was there, I did my coach training. And I had shared with you, I didn't think that people were going to pay me for coaching. And I was just like, oh, enough. I need to put my big panties on. And I just need to, as long as I'm here, I'm in the comfort zone, and I'm just going to be here. So I just said, I'm leaving. Here's my notice. I'm leaving in a month. And I had nothing lined up, and I didn't know what was going to happen, but I was just like, I have to take the leap, because that's what's going to force me to really show up for myself and take some bold moves. So that was really the move that really set me really further into my entrepreneurial career. And I would say the next one is a few years ago, as I was looking to grow my business, so I went into coaching, loved it. And then I was subcontracting to other organizations. They were selling the coaching work, and then I was the subcontractor. And as I was thinking about, well, I really want to grow my business, and I have a much bigger vision. I want to have greater impact, and I want to have a bigger business. And so I decided that I was going to end a really great relationship. And I was doing really great work and working with really great clients, but they were not directly my clients. And so without even having any, I remember it was June, I had no work lined up for the rest of the year. And I was like, I'm not going to take this work, because if I'm spending all my time building somebody else's business, I'm taking away the time to build my own business. And so that was a really bold move, because I didn't know where the revenue was going to come from. That was very scary. But I did it. And from there, I can't tell you, I discovered and ended up partnering with a company in the US, and really opened up my work that I do in the US. And I discovered and learned so many things in terms of just the types of opportunities, the scale of opportunities, the pricing out there. There was so much growth that happened for me by taking that one maverick move. And so, yeah, there's so many more that I can share as an entrepreneur, but it's so important that you're as an entrepreneur taking those bold maverick moves.
Love it. And amazing that you did. And look at what's happened. So there you go. It's taking a chance. Why are you so passionate about helping women and people of color?
Well, and you can hear from my stories that I didn't, as a woman of color myself, I didn't have people to show me the way. And I also, as I became more senior in my leadership, I started to hear things like, oh, we're not going to buy this business from her anymore because she's pregnant. We can't hire her because she has, a lisp. We can't hire this person because of the way that they look. I started to hear where these biases were coming from. They would tell me, you're meeting the chairman, make sure you wear a really nice dress and shoes. Or they would say things like, why do you need so much money? You don't have any kids. Why do you need balance? You don't have any kids. And it was just like that made me so angry to hear messages like that. And so I have to be honest, it was my followers who told me to go there. they were the ones who were being attracted to the work that I was doing. And it was they who kind of guided me there. And it was just really based on my own personal experiences. And also because I really want to see a change in how decisions are being made at the senior levels, and really want to create opportunities and get people to, like, there's, even when I was, for example, when I was a professor at George Brown, 50% of my students were international students. And they were coming from organizations like Eli Lilly, from Accenture, from Samsung, from, rather they were from Venezuela, whether they're from India, from China. Like, it didn't matter where they were coming from. And they were really brilliant people. But when they came to Canada, they were not getting opportunities here. They were just like, you don't have Canadian experience. And I'm like, but they were working for brands, such, huge brands, and they were not being hired here. And so that really was just like all of those little messages and experiences that I had that really kind of led me to what I'm advocating for today.
So you mentioned you want to create opportunities in leadership. How are you hoping to change what's currently happening right now in leadership?
Well, it's twofold. It's working with those leaders and helping them to find their voice and being comfortable with being the only, whether you're the only woman or being comfortable with being the only person of color. That was the case for me when I was in many situations where I was the only person of color in leadership. So finding your voice can be really challenge. And so that's one part of the business. And then the second piece is where I'm working with corporations and helping them to understand, how can we create safe spaces? How can you create those opportunities? Doing the education piece. And really then the next piece, which is helping these individuals that they're at the executive level, helping them to think about, well, you should be thinking about being at the board, because that's where the changes are happening. And oftentimes when I'm talking to women, that's not even in their realm of thinking as they're thinking about their careers. They don't even know how to tackle that and start to think about that. And so it's also opening that realm of possibilities and thinking about even more broadly what they could be doing with their skill sets.
Amazing. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
One was niching down. And that was a very, very scary piece for me. And because I was like doing really amazing coaching, working with executive men. And for me to niche down and focus on women and people of color, I was like, oh, I don't want to, I'm having so much success here. I'm doing such great work here. So that was a very scary piece. And I didn't realize how much more it solidified my credibility, my offering, and how much I would be attracting people based on niching. And so I thought that was a really powerful piece of advice. There were a lot of signals that were happening at the time, and it was very scary to make that choice. But niching down to really help grow my impact was a really powerful piece of advice.
It's a great piece of advice.
Yeah.
Who inspires you?
It's people like you, Michelle. Like when you started this video podcast, I was like, damn, she went for it. Like, that's scary for me to do. So when I see entrepreneurs like you taking these risks, starting from scratch and just doing it, those are the moments and those are the women that inspire me, because they're, like I said, as a business owner, you have to keep showing up and you have to keep taking maverick moves, or I call them bold moves. You call them maverick moves. And so it's the entrepreneurs who are taking those maverick moves. Those are the people who are inspiring me, and they inspire me to take more action than in my own business.
Thank you. That's amazing. You inspire me equally. So I love it. How do you want to inspire others?
I think it's just showing up. It's having the courage to make the bold moves. It's having the courage to share your voice, and having the courage to, and being comfortable and really owning what your purpose and passion is. I lived that out. I'm moving towards a new direction as I'm going through this new phase of perimenopause and menopause and dancing with that and really understanding how it's affecting me to show up as a CEO. I'm now moving towards that and being like, okay, I'm not the only woman going through this. And so other women need to, they're in silence and they're in a stigma and not speaking up and and they're being interrupted in their careers. And so I really am moving towards helping them to support that. And so the inspiration that I want to leave is like, it's scary. Who am I to be talking about menopause? Yes, I'm going through it and I'm dancing. I say I'm doing the tango with menopause. And sometimes it's stepping on my toes and sometimes I'm stepping on their toes. And so it's scary to take on a new endeavor like that. But it's like, okay, how many people can I impact? You know, if I think about my broader mission about getting more women and people of color to senior leadership roles, well, for some women, menopause can interrupt that experience. And so this is like another piece of that I want to tackle and help really support.
It's amazing. Smart, really smart. Here's a fun one. You're stuck in an elevator with three people. Who are they? Who are you bringing? Who's stuck? Okay.
I want to bring some comedians with me because I think I've been stuck in an elevator for like maybe a minute. But I imagine, if I was stuck in an elevator for a really long time, I want to be surrounded by people who will just make fun and make me laugh. So it's people like Ali Wong, it's Trevor Noah, it's Russell Peters. There's another comedian who I just love. He was the character in Jin Yang in Silicon Valley. I forget his name, but he's got a Netflix show as well, and he's just so funny. So I would just love to be stuck in an elevator with these kinds of comedians.
Sounds amazing. I'm joining. Get me stuck in there with you. All right. Are you ready for the lightning round?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, amazing. So whatever comes to the top of your mind, just say it.
Okay.
So here we go. A night out or a night in?
Oh, a night out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
work from home, so I want to get out, night out.
Absolutely. Street smarts or book smarts?
Street smarts.
Stuff. What was your favorite subject in school?
I have a funny story because my husband asked me the same question, and I just immediately said, "Oh, computers." In high school, and he just makes fun of me. He's like, "Oh, you're such a nerd." But yeah, that was my favorite class in high school.
Amazing. What's your guilty pleasure?
Netflix and chocolate.
What kind of chocolate?
Dark chocolate, and I do like milk chocolate, but yeah, dark chocolate.
Good stuff. We can still be friends. Excellent.
Yeah.
Last place you traveled to?
Oh, I just came back from a trip in Europe. So we went to Poland, Finland, Estonia, and Stockholm.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Favorite book?
Okay. What just came to mind? There were two books that came to mind. Random, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. When I was a kid, I read that book multiple times, loved it. And there was a book I read when I was, thinking about leaving Microsoft. And it was written by an author who was also previously at Microsoft. And I can't remember what it was called. I think it was called Leaving Microsoft to Change the World.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about his journey, about when he went to Nepal, found out that it had this shared library, and it was just like two shelves of books, and you couldn't take the books out because they were just such prized possessions there. He ended up leaving Microsoft to start these libraries. And that gave me the courage to leave Microsoft, again, another comfort zone. So yeah, that's the book that just came to mind.
Amazing. What would you say to your 20-year-old self?
Freaking enjoy your 20s and 30s.
Good advice.
Especially don't take your health for granted.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what would you say to your 100-year-old self?
Oh. Probably, say something to my 100-year-old self. Damn, you did good.
Awesome. All right. How do you want to change the world?
I'm doing it today. I'm one person at a time, one executive, one woman at a time, one person of color at a time. Really just making them shine.
Beautiful. Last question. What's next?
So I shared what's next, which is my next program. I'm working on my menopause keynote and my menopause circles. So I'm really excited about that next program that I'm building right now.
I love it. Thank you so much, Salima, for sharing your insights, your wisdoms, your struggles, your failures, your triumphs. You've just given it all to everyone to embrace and really know that it's about taking those bold maverick moves that you have made and that everybody should make. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. This was a lovely conversation. You had some really great questions. And I hope that what I share inspires just one person to take that maverick move, whether it's leaving corporate, whether it's a choice in their business. But I hope that it inspires one person even, and that'll make all the difference.
It absolutely will. Thank you so much.
The Maverick Makers podcast is sponsored by Maverick Makers Content Creation Collective. We fuel your content pipeline through video, photography, design, and editorial. Let's connect to your audiences and make more sales. Learn more at maverickmakersco.com.